All right, NFL update time. Have a 49ers tape review, but also taking a look at the rest of the league. And I think the big story league wide today, at least as far as social media is concerned, is Trey Lance threw 5 interceptions for the Dallas Cowboys against the Chargers. The day after Justin Herbert and company were stuck in an elevator in Dallas, and they had to make a harrowing escape. But Lance for the Cowboys, 5 picks. Obviously not good whichever way you cut it. Especially the online community is going to have a field day with that. That's something that Trey Lance is getting roasted over right now. And I went back and I watched the tape of the game. Many of them weren't pretty. There was one that it was already bordering into desperation time. There's 3rd and 4, and Lance is rolling out and turned into a 50-50 ball. He just had to get it away from the pass rush, so I don't really blame him for that one. But he had a chance to tie the game late. It appeared that he had a receiver in the seam and just was inaccurate. Just airmailed him. And it was some of the inconsistency that we had seen from Trey Lance over his time with the 49ers. And he's still an extremely raw prospect. The Cowboys finally cut him loose this preseason because that's what you have to do with an extremely raw prospect. They let him throw 118 times in 3 games. That's 113 times. That's a lot of pass attempts over 3 games. 113 over 3 games. I think there were over 60 in that game against the Rams. And the big issue, though, the interception criticism is predictable. People always have a meltdown over interceptions. But my problem with the state of football analysis is that there could be a quarterback that goes an entire game without throwing a pick, and he won't take hardly any criticism, even if it was an extremely inefficient outing. In fact, that quarterback might occasionally take less criticism than a QB who had an explosive performance that was decidedly more efficient, but threw an interception or 2. And that's not the way to measure things. Now, obviously, 5 picks, not good for Trey Lance, but we could have seen the problems with his preseason performance much sooner than today. And now the totality of the evidence shows that they let him throw 113 times in order to try to knock off as much of the inexperience as they could. But he only was able to manage 662 passing yards in 113 attempts. That is 5.9 yards per attempt. For context, looking up yards per attempt out of qualifying NFL quarterbacks last year, the worst NFL quarterback that qualified, had enough attempts to fit into this statistical ranking, was Bryce Young. He had 5.5 yards per attempt, ranked number 28. So Trey Lance would have ranked 27 out of 28 quarterbacks in yards per attempt with the figure of 5.9 yards per attempt that he delivered over the course of this preseason, over the big sample, over the 113 attempts this preseason. So this is the catch-22 with Trey Lance. And this is what the 49ers saw, and they were able to exit because they had the guy that actually led the league in yards per attempt, and Brock Purdy, on their rosters at 9.6. There's a huge difference between 9.6 and 5.9. Purdy's number was actually borderline historically good. But Lance started only one season at the FCS level at North Dakota State. He joined the 49ers in 2021. It was obvious that he was too raw to start. The people who said that he was in a competition with Jimmy Garoppolo and was going to start in 2021 didn't know what they were talking about. So he was just going to have to learn behind the scenes and then have a crash course ahead of 2022, even though he was not a polished passer at all when the 49ers planned to hand him the baton. Obviously, he got the crash course. I don't think it was enough. He did not command enough trust from Kyle Shanahan to throw the ball the way that an NFL quarterback needs to throw the ball on a contending team. 49ers ended up running him a lot as a result. We saw Trey Lance actually run for a touchdown today against the Dallas Cowboys. And the result was, what was it? I think 16 runs over the course of the first 2 games, and then he got hurt against the Seattle Seahawks in week 2. Garoppolo took over, and then we saw Brock Purdy take over in week 13 that year. Then Lance lost to Sam Darnold for the QB2 spot, and the rest was history. He was sent to Dallas. The Cowboys have 1 year of Trey Lance under contract left, so they really want to see what they can get out of a raw prospect who just needs reps. So they let him throw 113 times over the course of this preseason, which is a wildly high number. It's got to be up there with the record amount of attempts for any quarterback in a preseason. That's what, about 34 attempts per game. So those are 3 full games of throws, throw-heavy games of throws for Trey Lance, and he was only able to manage those 5.9 yards per attempt. So, and you watch the tape, and there are some good moments. There was a beautiful fade ball that he threw for a touchdown early in that game to a rookie for Dallas. He took the read option and he sprinted for a touchdown. If there's one good thing I could say about Trey Lance's progression based on what I saw in the tape against the Chargers today, it is that he seems a little bit faster than he was with the 49ers. One issue for San Francisco, one of the misevaluations came where I think that they misdiagnosed Trey Lance's speed. And I think that the COVID year had a ton to do with that error for the 49ers. I think that you had much less intel on players. Obviously, with Lance, you had film against FCS competition, which is not nearly as good as, say, Brock Purdy's film against D1 competition at the FBS level. So I think they thought Trey Lance was a little bit faster than he actually was, and he wasn't quite able to get the edge. He wasn't quite able to electrify with his legs the way that the 49ers would have needed to if they were going to run heavy packages with Trey Lance. On the contrary, it's really funny because Brock Purdy's 10-yard split is faster than Trey Lance's. Brock Purdy was able to move better than Trey Lance within the context of what a quarterback actually has to do in terms of movement. So the 49ers were able to find what they're looking for from a mobility perspective much more readily through Brock Purdy than they were through Trey Lance. But then I saw Trey's touchdown run today, and I know that he wasn't playing against starters against the Chargers, but he ran away from some DBs. So it did look to me that maybe he has been working on the speed, doing some parachute runs, maybe some resistant runs, and that has improved. And we did see some deep passes and some throws with nice touch while he was with the 49ers too. And we saw that in the touchdown pass today. But then we also saw the horrific practices. I just got back from Las Vegas today. I was at Allegiant Stadium at this time last night for the game. And a year ago at Allegiant Stadium in the preseason, that's when Trey Lance had one of his bad performances for the 49ers that ultimately sealed the QB2 battle because Sam Darnold won that battle shortly thereafter. So, just at that spot, I was thinking about how inconsistent Trey Lance was due to no fault of his own, really. It was because he's such a raw prospect. And I remembered as I was watching Brock Purdy and how good he was last night and how polished he already is because of the 4 years of starting experience that he had prior to that with Iowa State. I just was reminded of the stark contrast that the 49ers saw between inexperienced QB, who obviously has a degree of talent. The 49ers thought that it was moldable clay, and the experienced QB who has fit so well into what the 49ers are doing. Obviously, they were able to pick Purdy, move on from the Lance experiment despite everything that they had invested in him. Now Lance is with the Cowboys, and some of the problems with efficiency continue, but I think they're under a much greater spotlight now that he's thrown 5 picks in one game. That's when the casual fan starts paying attention. But if you're going to look at this on an advanced level, 5.9 yards per attempt over 113 throws in the preseason when you're not facing the best defenders in the league, that's not good. It would have ranked 27th out of 28 qualifying quarterbacks last season. So it doesn't appear, it appears that Lance may have physically progressed in some ways, but as far as grasping the totality of the job of the quarterback position, we have not seen statistical evidence that he's done that. And we have to look at the stats because anybody can cherry pick a highlight or cherry pick a low light and have it serve their narrative. But looking at the big picture, this is why I tracked it so closely while Lance was at training camp for the 49ers. He actually was decent in the install stuff when they're running 11 on 11, just installing plays. But especially in 2021, once the 49ers moved to move the ball, situational football, his efficiency fell off a cliff. His accuracy fell off a cliff. He was like a 48, 49% passer in those situations. That improved in 2022. I think he turned into about a 55 to 60% passer in the move the ball periods where it's down and distance based and where you have to, just take into account all the different situations on the football field. But it still was nowhere near what we've seen from, highly competent NFL quarterbacks. And I think it's safe to say that the Dallas Cowboys have gotten the same quarterback that the 49ers were having trouble developing and didn't have time to develop. Now, Dallas, I don't know if they have time to develop Trey Lance either. He's only got one season left under contract, and Dak Prescott's a good quarterback. That's in both of the locations that Trey Lance has been, people have not accurately appraised the QB situation around him. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous with the 49ers. There were people arguing over the course of the offseason after 2022, after Brock Purdy did what he did over the half of the season after he took over, that Trey Lance should get his job back over Brock Purdy. And it's like, no, Purdy was playing at an elite top 3 level in 2022, and Lance had never even sniffed that. This is a meritocracy. Trey Lance doesn't just get a handout, right? Like it was absurd to me, the lack of respect that people had for what Purdy had actually done on the field. And they were trying to give Trey Lance something based on just potential or just based on where he was picked. Even before that in 2021, sure, I get it. The 49ers invested a lot in Trey Lance, but the 49ers had a quarterback that had been performing at a very efficient level for them in Jimmy Garoppolo. So there was no way that Lance was going to start over Garoppolo to begin that season. Yet people kept on making that narrative up. You're seeing the same thing happen, in a slightly different way in Dallas, but Dak Prescott was number 2 in QBR last year for the Cowboys, behind only Brock Purdy. Prescott had a really, really good year for Dallas. So it's not like Trey Lance is just going to walk in there and take Dak Prescott's job. Like it would take a sensational performance from Lance. And we haven't even gotten anything close to that. Instead, we saw a 5 interception game here and 5.9 yards per attempt over 113 attempts in the preseason. So people need to let go of this pipe dream that extremely raw quarterback from North Dakota State was going to step into the 49ers building, a Super Bowl contender, and become a day one starter. That was never going to happen. I thought the 49ers plan for Lance was ambitious. I thought threading the needle to get him ready for 2022 after 1 year was ambitious, but they decided to roll that dice. It obviously didn't work out. They got bailed out by Garoppolo and by Brock Purdy, but it's just as much of a pipe dream to think that Lance is going to step into Dallas with a number 2 QBR guy in the league and Dak Prescott and take his job. So yes, I mean, Lance hasn't been good. He hadn't been efficient. He threw 5 interceptions, but in a way, he's also the victim of completely unfair expectations. And at this point, people should have totally forgotten about the fact that he was the number 3 overall pick. Just like people should forget that Purdy was the 262 overall pick. Dak Prescott, I mean, he went later in the draft, right? So I mean, it's not. Wasn't he a 3rd rounder, or I think Dak might have been a 4th rounder for the Cowboys. So people need to forget about draft status. The draft is a crapshoot. Just evaluate each player for who they are. Purdy, an experienced guy that has dazzled the league. Dak Prescott came out of the SEC, but has developed into a good quarterback, all obviously with some flaws and some notable shortcomings in some of these playoff games. That's what Cowboys fans give him the hardest time for. And Trey Lance is a raw product who needs more time to develop, and I'm not quite sure where he's going to get that time at the NFL level. Is he going to have to play in a secondary league to get a lot of these snaps? Should he have stayed in college 1 more year? I don't know, but the efficiency hasn't been there. And obviously, this interceptions were for Trey Lance today. Anyway, that's 15 minutes of talk on the NFL. I figured I didn't have to do this show tonight, but I decided that it's 9:49 right now. I said, hey, why don't we talk 49ers. Why don't we empty the notebook? Kyle Shanahan is going to speak at 2:30 tomorrow. It's going to be a conference call. So we will get Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos MRI readings for you. You're not going to actually get to see the MRI reading, but I'll report on what we learn on those two fronts. That's the biggest potential piece of news that's going to come out of tomorrow. I'm guessing the 49ers will be back on the practice field come Monday, and the roster cut down is going to be on Tuesday. So this is really the pre-cut down conversation via the conference call on the phone with Kyle Shanahan tomorrow. And then we'll move forward into 53-man roster mode for the 49ers. We'll talk a lot about Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk. And then we will move forward into Labor Day weekend. Hopefully everybody gets a nice, restful Labor Day weekend before it's game week, 49ers and the New York Jets. Yesterday, and this is the emptying out of the notebook part, because I watched the tape this morning on the flight home from Las Vegas. I got a nice piece coming out tomorrow morning on Isaac Gendo, so you can go ahead and stay tuned for that. But I had arrows up for Isaac Gendo, Cam Latu, Jacob Cowing, and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. I also have an arrow up for a player that did not suit up yesterday, and that's Kyle Juszczyk. Braden Willis is the 49ers backup fullback. He's in the tight end room right here. He was not able to handle Janarius Robinson, the defensive lineman for the Raiders, on an early run. People need to start appreciating the difficulty of blocks that the 49ers assign Kyle Juszczyk. I think that really helps this offense stay on schedule. People also probably should just in general do more appreciating of the blocks that the 49ers task of all their skill position players, because that's going to help you understand who's most likely to make the 53-man roster. I have Cam Latu as the fourth tight end making it, because I think that he's got the most blocking ready frame out of the tight ends behind George Kittle. So really, I mean, he's a wide-necked kind of guy. And he was, remember that Cam Latu was a defensive end at Alabama before he was, before he transitioned positions to tight end. So in a way, he still is a raw tight end. I think the 49ers knew this when they drafted him in 2023. He got a medical redshirt year of sorts last season after the knee surgery. He's catching the ball a lot better this season. He took out two guys on Isaac Guerendo's 93-yard kick return, so he might be the perfect blocking body for special teams as well with these new rules. But I just think that the progress that we've seen from Latu in the receiving game is a good representation of his ascent. And his ascent, though, is not just going to be because of what he's doing in the receiving game. It's also because of what he's able to do blocking in the run game for the 49ers. So I think Cam Latu makes this roster. I think the 49ers needed to see an ascending player. They have seen an ascending player, and the last couple of weeks have been big for him for sure. Somebody else I wanted to talk about a little bit here is Drake Nugent. Somebody commented on my other video. They said, "Oh, you don't have Drake Nugent on your practice squad." I haven't, projected a practice squad on the video. I know that Matt Barrows and I projected a 53-man roster, but that was kind of a split effort. A lot of this stuff, it's really important to emphasize that there's so many variables. There's a lot of guessing going on in certain situations. As the picture materializes, I will explain the 49er strategy, why they did each move, and what they're looking at with some of these players. But especially for the practice squad, it's much more of a shot in the dark than even the 53-man roster. But somebody like Drake Nugent, the center, first out of Stanford, then he transferred to Michigan, who only gave up the one pressure over 59 pass blocking snaps. I do think the 49ers have future plans for Drake Nugent. He was an undrafted free agent, though. You can't, think that, just because if they cut Drake Nugent to try to re-sign him to the practice squad, he'll get poached before he gets re-signed to the practice squad. That's not really, I get it. The 49ers are a team that other teams are going to try to raid. They're going to try to poach their players. And Manning last year got poached. But you can't think that way at the back end of the roster if you're the 49ers, because then you're going to have a developmental roster instead of a roster that's geared toward trying to win a Super Bowl this year. And if the guy was an undrafted free agent, the chances are that other teams also will not have room to kick somebody off their 53-man roster to poach him from the 49ers. Yes, it can happen. Yes, the 49ers have to be strategic, but it's not just about carrying Drake Nugent on the 53 so they can continue to develop him. They need to think about 2024 first. And sometimes doing so is going to involve some risk, some exposure of players that you like to the waiver wire. You hope that they clear the waiver wire and you can bring them back to the football team through the practice squad. So to clear up one of the questions I had in the comment section, yeah, I think that Drake Nugent is somebody that the 49ers want on the practice squad. Will he necessarily make it all the way there? No. I mean, it's not something that's guaranteed, but I think in an ideal world, that's something that the 49ers will like. I thought Drake was good again last night. Now I look to see more from yesterday. How about Jordan Mason? The way that he's running, and I think that Elijah Mitchell is a really good back as well. I see Mason and Mitchell as 2A and 2B. Maybe Mason's now 2A and Mitchell is 2B. I don't see an imminent trade of somebody like Elijah Mitchell, but I do see an extremely deep running back room that could deal Elijah Mitchell or somebody in that room closer to the trade deadline, kind of like how the 49ers were able to trade Jeff Wilson Jr. to the Miami Dolphins a couple years back after they acquired Christian McCaffrey. But right now, isn't that a good-looking running back room? I think it's the best in the NFL. McCaffrey's the best in the league. Mitchell and Mason might be two of the best backups in the league. And Isaac Gendo, well, he's a weapon in his own right. Isaac Gendo had an awesome bowl game for Louisville. This is a guy who started only one game in his college career. So that's a bit of a red flag, right? And I think it's tied to a lot of the injury issues that he had, first at Wisconsin, then at Louisville. Then Isaac Gendo went off for 202 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns in the Holiday Bowl against USC for Louisville. That ended his college career. So last time that we had seen him in game action before yesterday at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, I thought he looked good on some of the outside zone runs. On one of the inside zone runs, he pushed his way to a first down. He's not afraid of contact, and that's saying something for a guy who actually entered high school as a wide receiver. So Bobby Turner has wanted Gendo to adopt the running backs mentality. I think that he has. And you know what? The new kickoff return is a lot like an outside zone run. And that's what Gendo thinks. That's what the 49ers, I think, are approaching this as. And he might be the ideal guy for that. I'll repeat this. Only 2 players over the past 20 years have entered the league having run a 4.33 40 or faster, 4.33 at 220 pounds or heavier. DK Metcalf and Isaac Gendo. This is a special physical skill set. And obviously the big key is to stay healthy if you are Isaac Gendo. Health is wealth for him. So that's the main reason he only started that one game in college. But I thought that he was impressive last night. I thought that Patrick Taylor Jr. was moving some people last night running hard. He obviously isn't as light on his feet and as quick as a premier athletic prospect like Gendo. But it'll be interesting to me to see how the 49ers build the practice squad. So I like Cody Schrader enough to keep him around. Obviously, you have Matt Breida, but at this age, he might have just been a guy in there to fill a role. I have an article coming out tomorrow. I think you guys will enjoy it. It ties past and present together. Breida wore it number 49 in training camp in 2017, and then he earned the number 22 when he made the 53-man roster. Gendo's got the number 49. Is he going to earn a number in the 20s? Is he going to switch to a number in the 20s? I talked about it with Gendo at his locker, so you could read that tomorrow on The Athletic. I don't think Braden Willis had a great game. He missed that one block. I think Cam Latu is a rising stock for the 49ers. I think Saubert is locked in as tight end too. We haven't seen nearly as much from Mason Pline down the stretch of training camp. Makes me wonder, are they going to invest one of those practice squad developmental spots in Pline? He is a raw prospect, so if there's somebody they're going to be more patient with, it would be somebody like Pline. They did bring back Logan Thomas the practice squad might be an option for him, but I do think that Latu has the inside track now to grab that 53-man roster spot. How about Tatum Bethune, the linebacker down here? Does he make the 53? I mean, it's crowded in here, but Dre Greenlaw is going to start the season on PUP based on everything that we've gathered. So you've got Warner, you got Devondre Campbell, veteran, D. Winters, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who I think is ahead of Winters and everybody else on it's lower here on that depth chart. Graham, Curtis Robinson. I think Foles is his special teams ability gives him some edge. I think Robinson might be a trade candidate for the 49ers, or even Flanagan-Fowles at some point. But Robinson has shown some real upside, and he's still a younger player that we have to look out for. But there's a lot of talent in this room. But then I watched Tatum Bethune play in the second half of these games, and you can't teach some of the stuff that players like him do. They just have a nose for the football. They're not afraid to hit. They're violent players. They're tone setters at the linebacker position. Tatum Bethune might have been a 7th-round pick. His hips might be a little bit tight to compromise his coverage ability. But boy, is he a football player, and he's the type of football player that you can't really teach. These kind of guys don't just appear. Those guys really, really have to emerge through work, and they leave imprints on teams. He left an imprint on Florida State. So will Tatum Bethune make this 49ers 53-man roster? If not, can they stash him on that practice squad? The secondary was super interesting to me yesterday because I thought that Samuel Womack had some nice pass breakups. He also had a really bad play in coverage on the touchdown. Darrell Luter Jr. got beaten a couple times, but it seemed to me he was always in good position, and then he had the interception, and he made a couple nice plays. But I think there's a reason why the 49ers signed Rock Ya-Sin. And in a title or bust season, you're going to rely on your veterans until the rookies absolutely prove themselves. And I think Renardo Green has done a great job as far as establishing himself, but he got beaten a couple times yesterday. I think between Charvarius Ward, Isaac Yadam, who probably returns to practice this coming week, Deommodore Lenoir, and Rock Ya-Sin, boy, you've got 4 quality veteran cornerbacks. And why rely on younger players until it's clear that those younger players are better options than the young corners? The 49ers were able to get a lot of reps for the young guys, for Green, for Luter, for Samuel Womack, Ambry Thomas before he broke his forearm. And I know he's not a young guy per se anymore. He's entering his 4th year. But they got a lot of reps for those guys in the preseason. Now that we're shifting to regular season mode, look out for some of these veterans, including Rock Ya-Sin. Might be their chance to shine. We'll see. I mean, Rock Ya-Sin had to play quite a bit, even a little bit later into yesterday's game. So I don't think he's a lock for anything, but that's just the read that I'm getting from the 49ers. How about, on the defensive line, speaking of watching the tape, there's awesome tape out there of Malik Collins right here, the defensive tackle, just taking on and destroying 2 defenders in the run, showing a tremendous amount of strength, ragdolling guys in the run game. Between Collins and this guy right here, Jordan Elliott, the 49ers have 2 new additions who look like they have real width and capability to hold their ground against the run. This was a defense that was number 26 against the run last season. It's been one of the areas where I've been very, very critical of the 49ers defense, especially under Steve Wilks. Well, obviously, the defensive coordinator and his schemes did not help the 49ers against the run. They fired Steve Wilks, but I don't think that the interior defensive line has been nearly as strong. They've been missing a big, wide DJ Jones type to shed some of these double teams ever since Jones left the free agency to the Denver Broncos after the 2021 season. So, Armstead was a longer defender. I thought he was a good defender. Thought he was excellent when he was paired with DJ Jones, but he was never the exact body type the 49ers needed to stymie the run. And there's a reason why the run defense eroded. And then it eroded even more when we saw that Eric Armstead was losing his availability. 13 games he missed over the past 2 seasons. So they went out this offseason looking to get bigger, wider bodies for the inside. And they came back with Malik Collins, trade with the Texans, and Jordan Elliott, who was with the Browns, actually ranked number 6 in ESPN's run stop win rate last year. Javon Hargrave has always been a better pass rusher than a run defender. So I wouldn't look at Javon Hargrave as the be-all, end-all to turn around the run defense problems. But I would look at Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott as an interesting example of the 49ers trying to do something new. Speaking of that defensive tackle position and watching the tape yesterday, Evan Anderson is their undrafted free agent out of Florida Atlantic, $280,000 guarantee. I think that he's probably headed toward the practice squad unless he takes that last spot. We talked about them potentially carrying 9 defensive linemen. They would have carried Kalia Davis, but instead he's going to go to injured reserve. So Evan Anderson had 3 pressures yesterday, including on the touchdown pass that Samuel Womack gave up. Anderson, big number 66, was fighting his way to the quarterback. This is a raw player. He came from Florida Atlantic. Not all that experienced, but is immediately one of the 49ers' biggest players at 320 plus pounds. And I would not count out somebody like Evan Anderson from developing into what the 49ers might need. Remember that DJ Jones was the 6th round pick in 2017, and it took him a couple years. It wasn't until 2019 that he really found a way to keep himself in really good shape and deliver. And the 49ers need to be similarly patient with some of their lower round picks and some of the undrafted free agents that they've added to the team. What else do we got here for you? Splitting Jordan Mason wide. I thought that was interesting early. Every single bit of data suggests the 49ers are going to be throwing more with Brock Purdy. Going empty backfield with Jordan Mason out wide, first drive. That's notable. That's notable for the 49ers. Purdy's escapability seems just as good or better than last year. He had a couple of very nifty evasions of the Raiders pass rush. Brandon Parker and Chris Hubbard both got beat yesterday. I think that's a weakness. I think it's ironic. I think that the 49ers, their exterior lines, both on offense and defense, are much bigger issues than their interior lines now. We had talked about the interior offensive line being a problem in the past. We had talked about the interior defensive line being a problem just last season as far as stopping the run. But look, they've completely overhauled the interior defensive line. Elliott, Collins, new players. They have overhauled the interior offensive line just through somebody like Dominic Puny, new starter at that right guard position. And then obviously they picked Nugent and Kingston. I should play that video for you guys from Bernal Heights. That was fun. We're going to play that to end this. I'm going to get it ready right now. But Nugent, Kingston, Dominic Puny, that's called an interior line revamp for the 49ers. Well, now the interior is for San Francisco, to me, especially with Trent Williams is still holding out, the interior is looking like it's ascending and might end up stronger than the exterior. Colton McKivitz at that right tackle position. And even though you have Nick Bosa on the defensive side, the injuries to Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos, and I'll have updates for you tomorrow on those 2 guys and their MRIs. That's meant that the defensive end position is one of the thinnest positions on the 49ers team. Who do you go to next? Robert Beal Jr., Alex Barrett, Sam O over here. I don't know who you go to next. The first 2 guys out were Sam O and Robert Beal Jr. after the 2 injuries. But it looks to me like the interior could be stronger collectively than the exterior. And that is one of the big paradoxes, one of the big changes, one of the interesting shifts that we've seen from the 49ers along both the offensive and the defensive line. So that was my appraisal on the game. I'm looking through the notes here to see if there's any more. I'll go back to what I said about the tie. I think that the tie was Bush League. I think that we should have seen the Raiders try to go for the win. The 49ers certainly pushed it for a win. It didn't work out for them, even though they exhausted themselves going for it. There's a really good quote from Josh Dobbs in the locker room that I'm going to read to you right now, though, because the effort that the 49ers backups delivered on that final play, I think is a testament to the culture that the 49ers have instilled in the building, and I think Josh Dobbs agreed. So I'm going to read this quote from Josh Dobbs. I think it was really cool to see how much the guys care. As you said, it's preseason, and sometimes the value might not be in the final result of the game, but to see the guys fighting until the final whistle shows how much they care, shows the pride of this team, and really shows the culture that's been built here over the past several years. It's something I'm excited to be a part of this coming year. That was the vibe in the 49ers locker room. Diamond Lenore said that he was surprised the Raiders decided to just kind of take the easy way out and kick the field goal instead of going for the win, even though they didn't have all that much to lose. But those were just the thoughts of people in the 49ers locker room. All right, here's the special from Bernal Heights, new spot of San Francisco on the 49ers offensive line. Rookie class might save the 49ers offensive line. As we talk about Dominic Puny, Jared Kingston, and Drake Nugent, welcome from America's most beautiful city. Top of Bernal Heights. I guess it rained twice today as I was on my way home from Las Vegas, where I saw the 49ers' top 3 rookie offensive linemen put on another great performance. And this has huge implications for Brock Purdy and this team, both in the present and in the future, because they've needed an immediate improvement, especially at right guard. And Dominic Puny is going to start at right guard, and he had 58 pass blocking snaps over 3 preseason games, gave up a total of 2 pressures. One of the lowlights for Puny happened yesterday where he got crossed up on the stunt, pushed back into Brock Purdy. That was one of the pressures that he gave up, but Purdy immediately turned it into a highlight because Brock Purdy is an elite quarterback and he was able to feather the ball over the linebacker in front of the safety to George Kittle. That was the play on which Puny gave up the pressure. Then there's Jared Kingston, who came in a little bit later. He's also been playing guard, playing some tackle also during the practices for the 49ers. And Kingston had 85 snaps in pass protection over the 3 games, and he only gave up 2 pressures. So in Puny and Kingston, you have 2 offensive linemen who ranked in the top 5 of all offensive linemen this year in the short shuttle. And the short shuttle is how quickly, measures how quickly a player can shuffle from side to side. And that's obviously extremely important, not only to run blocking, but also to pass protection. Then you have Drake Nugent, who scored very well in the short shuttle as well. He plays a different position. He plays center. I think center is extremely important to what the 49ers do offensively. Kyle Shanahan has long pursued high-priced centers. Remember Weston Richburg. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the 2019 season, but then Alex Mack has been with Shanahan for 3 stops before he retired after the 2021 season. Well, Nugent was an all Big Ten center at Michigan on a 15-0 national championship team for Jim Harbaugh, the former 49ers coach. The only reason that he wasn't drafted was because he's a little undersized for the position. But he had 59 pass blocking snaps over the course of this preseason, and he gave up only 1 pressure, which ranked number 3 of all centers in the NFL. So Nugent, he might be a practice squad guy. This might be a future project for the 49ers. But I think that Puny, especially since he's already been named the starting right guard, and Kingston, they can help this 49ers offensive line immediately. I'm making my way across Bernal. This is absolutely epic. Right above the Mission, by the way, we could step over here so you guys can get a better look at the Mission behind me. Twin Peaks is over that way. Mike again being put to the test with the wind coming over Twin Peaks from the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't get any better than this. So this year, the 49ers offensive line, they ranked, I think, number 21 in pass block win rate last year. I've been highly critical of the 49ers pass protection for years. And I've always pointed, it seems, when I'm criticizing this line, I've always pointed at that right guard position first. You can, even if Colton McKivitz is not a good pass protector, I know he had his struggles yesterday, the throw that Deebo Samuel couldn't hang on to, the interception, Brock Purdy had a fight against immediate pressure coming against Colton McKivitz. But even if right tackle struggles, the quarterback has a little bit of time to react and get away. We saw Purdy sidestep pressure from the right yesterday on the throw to the right to Jordan Mason. But if pressure's coming right up the middle, that's the kryptonite of every single quarterback. So you better have
good blocking, good pass protection from your guards, especially with some of these new age defensive tackles. It started with the Aaron Donald revolution. Some of these light defensive tackles who are super quick on the inside. You need real athleticism. That's why that short shuttle is such a good measurement and such a good predictor for offensive linemen who are going to succeed. So I think Dominic Puny's quickness, athleticism, and his anchor, he didn't give up a single sack over 2 years at Kansas, is extremely significant. I think that the same holds true for Jared Kingston. You have to look at these guys' backgrounds, right? Jared Kingston was at Washington State in the air raid under Mike Leach. So they hardly ever ran the ball. So he really polished his game as a pass protector at his first stop. And then he transferred to USC, where there was obviously more running happening. And I think he's developed into a guy that can succeed in the 49er system. San Francisco is going to pass more than ever under Kyle Shanahan this year. That's a testament to Brock Purdy. It's a testament to their weapons, but it's also a testament, I think, to an improving offensive line. Kingston can pass block. We'll see if and when he is inserted into the lineup. It's obviously been a good start to him in his rookie preseason. Puny is in the lineup. He can pass block in the future. It does look like Drake Nugent also knows what he's doing, but more development will obviously be needed. But with more passing comes more responsibility up front. And with a franchise quarterback like Brock Purdy being one of the best talents in the game comes the need to protect him. And I think that the 49ers are firmly on that track. Now, there are still injuries and hurdles to overcome along the offensive line. Obviously, Colton McKivitz is not a great right tackle, especially in pass protection. But I think that Puny has shown the attention to detail so far over the course of these 3 preseason games that indicate he might be able to help Colton McKivitz. Just some of the awareness to be able to step to the right, make a little shove to the right whenever Colton McKivitz might need a little bit of help. Especially that one example against the Saints in the red zone on the throw that went from Josh Dobbs to Trent Taylor. Puny was looking for somebody to block, and I guess he might have even created a little bit of an issue, but his wherewithal, mental wherewithal to quickly erase it was impressive to me. He stepped on McKivitz's foot, realized that McKivitz might need some help because of that, because he destabilized his teammate, so he gave a shove to the right side and then spun around when he didn't have a pass rusher to pick up in his own lane. He spun around to help Colton McKivitz on the backside. I mean, really, really good wherewithal, really, really good awareness for a rookie, right? And that's what we saw from Dominic Puny on that play. Jared Kingston, he'll continue to develop into that role. And then Drake Nugent, he's got a whole other list of things to worry about that begins with calling out the safety rotations and setting the protections for the offensive line, because that goes through the center in the 49ers system. All right, we're going to finish up this tour, and there was a prank. I'm going to play the prank at the end. John Feliciano, and this is the part of the injury situation the 49ers have to overcome up front. Feliciano, surgery on his knee, is going to be out for about half the season. He's the one that pranked Dominic Puny by pouring a bunch of styrofoam into his car. He said that Puny deserved it. I'm not so sure. I met Puny. I met his parents. Seemed like really nice people. I don't know what he possibly could have done to deserve it. I'll play the video after this, but you got to take care of the injury situation where you don't have the insulation of John Feliciano. You have to make sure that Jake Brendel's knee holds up, because he's got the knee tendonitis that he's dealing with here, and he has been dealing with maybe even since last year. Maybe that marked the regression. You've got to overcome the fact that Aaron Banks is going to be out until at least week 1 with a pinky injury. I think that there was some trouble over on the left side of the line yesterday. The one Purdy sack, that was the fault of Nick Zakelj, the backup left guard, and Jalen Moore, the backup left tackle, just getting beaten by a 2-man rush. And obviously you got to get Trent Williams back, and maybe that happens this week. Maybe Big Trent comes back this week. That helps solidify the 49ers offensive line in the short term. And in a longer term, you're looking at contributions from Jared Kingston, obviously Dominic Puny now, and in the longer term, and potentially even Drake Nugent. But what a start for these rookie offensive linemen. I think that's one of the biggest stories for the 49ers coming out of training camp. This is why you can't just go to any source on the internet and think that you know about the 49ers accurately. Oh, they said they didn't invest in the offensive line. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at 3 gems along the offensive line based on what we've seen so far. So it looks like the 49ers actually did invest in the offensive line, and probably would have been smart to just sit back and see things develop, because that's what the 49ers are doing now. And these 3 guys, Puny, Kingston, and Drake Nugent, they could spearhead a a real turnaround for the 49ers pass protection, not just now, but moving into the future. All right, it's Sunset signing off from Bernal Heights. Here's that prank video that John Feliciano was able to pull on Dominic Puny.
A lot of styrofoam in the car, styrofoam peanuts in the car. Poor Dominic Puny shows up and has to get this removed from his car. And it's all from John Feliciano, who, according to this post, thinks that Puny deserved it. And I think they might have gotten all the rookies, but that's that. This is Bernal Heights. This is from the little hike I just did today. I actually ran up the hill. Felt like Jerry Rice running up the hill. I needed to give myself some energy. Sunset, made it there in time, recorded the video. The mic performed well. It wasn't even that windy, but I think I still needed the mic. And then I got this one. This is the good closing shot. I hope that everybody has a beautiful Saturday night, Sunday morning if you're already on the East Coast. We'll talk to you soon.